All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome here to Town Hall Heroes episode number 60. I am Solid Jake, joined by the wrong scene here. Oh, yes. There we go. We have everyone here today. The whole crew back together for the first time in 3 weeks, and we are joined by none other than Mr. Matt Shambari of Blizzard.
Hello, good to be here.
Yeah, so just opening up, why don't you just explain who you are and what you do for Blizzard?
All right, so my name is Matt Shimberry. I'm one of the senior software engineers on the Heroes of the Storm team, and I lead up the UI engineering group. So I'm in charge of all the UI pieces and making sure they get implemented, and how we would build them and prioritizing features and that kind of stuff. And prior to that, I spent 6.5, 7 years working on StarCraft as well. So I did a lot of work on StarCraft. I did the programming for like the editor, a lot of editor work, cutscenes, things like that. So been at Blizzard for about 8 years now.
Damn. Wow, that is a long time. Well, we'll get more into that pretty soon. Let's just go through the introductions with Kevin.
Hey everybody, just been doing a lot of smaller things. Titan Arena this past weekend was pretty awesome. Got a pretty good turnout out of everything. Had Greg Caston, and we got Cloud9 Maelstrom, who took first place, versus Tempo Storm, who took second. Spoiler alert. But YouTube VODs are up on YouTube, so you can go check this out. But other than that, I also saw All Work, All Play, the ESL IEM League of Legends documentary.
Yeah.
That featured like Cloud9 and all them. That was really awesome. Really recommend checking that out because it was just like a really good way to like introduce people into esports and like what esports means and everything.
They've only had the initial showing in New York so far, right?
Yeah, I meant like just like get ready for when it comes out.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's about it so far. And yeah, just excited for Town Hall. So yeah.
Lord Kubis.
Well, let's see, what have I been busy with this past week? Checking out some of the tournaments over the weekend. Of course, Heroes of the Dorm and Titan Arena. And other than that, I've been catching up on games with, well, not really catching up with Jake, but we got to cast once again last night for ESL. And then I've been catching up with some various games with Mr. Forecourt Jester. Other than that, I seem to have become ill and have been spending all of my spare time just driving my face into a pillow and sleeping. So that's fun.
Rip you.
Yeah.
Speaking of sickness.
It was an okay week. For those that missed the pre-show, I got a new graphics card, monitors, RAM, so my computer can handle streaming at a higher quality,
He
which is
actually
good
sold
news.
his immune system
Yeah.
to buy all of that gear.
Yeah, so that's good news going forward. I got really sick last Wednesday, got kind of better. That's why I wasn't on Town Hall last week. Got kind of better and got really sick again over the weekend. And we'll talk about it later when we talk about Titan Arena, but I blame a large portion of why we lost versus Maelstrom on me being sick because I made a few really bad judgment calls or could have prevented bad things. We'll talk about that later. And then I've been really sick. Really sick. It was awesome. And today was terrible because the graphics card I just bought broke today. And today is our day off from practice. So I actually had a day to just like go ham on GTA 5, new graphics card. That broke. So yeah, it's been a fun week, man.
Well, hopefully it gets better for you. I've been in a interesting situation, just traveling around a lot for Heroes of the Dorm, but it was a phenomenal experience being involved with that. Get to hang out with guys like Matt and some of the guys over at Blizzard, just hanging out, working on that production. And I'd say we put on a heck of a show. I was really proud to be part of that production, but I get to fly back out on Friday to be part of the finals, and I guess that'll be our first topic of the night before we delve into Matt more directly. Let's just briefly recap everything with Heroes of the Dorm because this directly segues into a big part of our discussion, and that's the UI.
Right.
And we talked about the Heroes of the UI a little bit last week, and we saw a bit of a transition from week 1 to week 2. But Matt, can you walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So you mean like the transition this past week?
Yeah, like the upgrades from week 1 to week 2, and do we have
Yeah.
something for week 3 or?
Right. So yeah, the first week, we built the UI as everyone saw it there, and one of the key missing pieces there was the mini map, of course. And we knew that was going to be a bit of a shocking experience, and we'll dive into a bit. I sent you some of those images to talk about what we what some of our constraints were. But we wanted to see if it could work, because one of the things that we're trying with this whole broadcast UI is that. We just want to experiment different things and see what works. This is a kind of a different platform, a different way of viewing the game. You're sitting on a couch, on your TV. It's a very different experience, very different kind of, how you're able to see things very different, what you're able to read, the font size you're able to read, things like that. And so we wanted to try to just see what we could do. And so we went without a mini map to see if it could work. And ultimately, the feedback that we got was that it's missing a lot of context, and we didn't disagree with that. And so the next week, it kind of scrambled to get the mini map back in. And so we wanted to try different ways still, though, because the biggest problem that we had, and this is, I guess, starting to dive into some of the specific technical stuff, is that we had to deal with this thing called title safe. And if you read the blog post, actually, the shot that's a little bit, that there. Right, that one exactly. So if you want to be on TV, there's this thing called title safe, and this was a brand new thing I'd never known before, where all of your UI, all of your text and graphics and things like that must exist inside of that blue box there, right? And so this is actually an FCC mandate, FCC regulation, right? You have to do this, otherwise you get fined by the FCC. And so we had to actually rearrange everything. Because as you can see, all of our UI is outside the box because PC game, right? You typically put things around the border, things like that. And so, we wanted to look at what our different options were and decided to, we had to move everything within there. And so if you want to queue up the graphic for, one of the ones I sent you before, the one with the whole thing, yeah, it moved in. There you go. So that one there is, what this is showing is, what if we just took our existing UI and just moved it to be within the title safe, right? Just very simple, just take everything and shift it, right? And yeah, you can see that's kind of not fantastic. Like it's really kind of claustrophobic having all the UI kind of there in the middle of the screen like that. And you can imagine if we wanted to show some of the other information like on Ali's interface, you have nothing left, right? You just eat up the entire screen. And so that we realized wasn't really a viable option. So the next thing we did, though, was, well, what if we just did nothing, right? If you keep the next graphic, there you go. If we did nothing, this is what would happen by the broadcast people. They would have to inset the entire thing and just put some kind of image behind it, right? And so that doesn't look good either. I think everyone can agree that you really can't read anything. Like actually, the resolution that I'm looking at on the monitor right here, I can't see anything at all. You can imagine kind of being back, 8 feet away from a TV. That'd just be impossible to read. So anyway, we looked at basically every sports UI out there. I spent a whole bunch of time just going through, taking screenshots of baseball, football, kind of your typical sports. But I looked at like Olympic sports. What does swimming do? What does, all different kind of sports. I even went to look at, can I actually watch and understand something I don't know anything about, like cricket? And so looking at what does the cricket UI look like, right? Things like that. And so we went through all these things. I took notes on every single one and wanted to see what can we learn from these different things. And ultimately what you saw was one that was kind of inspired by these different sports UIs because they've had to solve this problem for decades at this point, because that title safe thing is something that's been around for TV forever. And there's a bunch of technical reasons why, but ultimately, we had to follow that rule. And it was, I don't know, I thought it was a lot of fun doing all that research and seeing all the sports stuff, to be perfectly honest. So.
All right, so that's the baseline, building it all. But from week 1 to week 2,
yes, I didn't even answer.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It was all great information. I'm just continuing the discussion.
Yeah.
Week 1 to week 2, the majority of the feedback was mini-map.
Okay, so yeah, mini-map, and I don't disagree with it. The mini-map does provide a lot of information, and what we thought we could do, and we did a lot of testing prior to the actual event, was what if the casters can just kind of tell you everything? And what if we're really good with observing and camera work and all that? And I think there's still a lot of promise there that if you think about something like a radio broadcast of football or baseball or soccer, actually soccer has a ton of positional information. Radio broadcasts are able to kind of get away with not telling you where everyone is just by kind of describing where all the characters are, players. Same with, even like watching football, right? Football doesn't have a mini map, right? But there's obvious very big differences between the sports and what we have, right? And so when we tried that and realized that we wanted to do something else, then that week came in and, decided, okay, well, what if we just bring the mini map up contextually when it makes sense? And so we had that little one in the corner first, kind of your more standard mini map. And we still ran into the same problems where we either would make it too small so you couldn't read what was on the screen, right? Or we made it so big it was taking up a big chunk of the screen, right? And I think it is fair to say that there's a lot of moments when watching, and this is all while watching, by the way, it's all about viewers. It's fair to say that there are a lot of moments where the minimap you can get away with not having, right? There's action going on right in front of you, right? And so we thought, okay, well, let's bring it up and down. Then I was talking to some others, and I forget who it was, had the idea of, well, what happens if we just make a giant one, right? What if we bring it up and actually in some of the downtime moments, we just have this giant map that shows everything? And so we decided to go with that route as well. Yeah, that's the one there. And so we actually added like a blur effect and everything, so you can still kind of see what's going on in the background, but your focus is very much brought to the center of the screen. The unfortunate thing, though, is that where we were with that particular week, we actually couldn't make a ton of or we actually couldn't make any at all code changes. We couldn't actually put a client patch out between from week to week. And so they had to look exactly like it did, but all we could do was kind of position it and scale it how we want. And so anyway, that's where we ended up with that. We also tried to add the heroic indicators, and I actually had it fully working, and it was signed off by QA and everything. Like we had this whole thing ready to go, and then we discovered during rehearsal that there's a very subtle difference to how we actually set up the observing and how we slave one observer to the other that actually caused them to break. And
wow.
we did not expect that. And I was very sad about that. I spent a couple hours kind of scrambling on site, seeing if I could fix it, but I was not able to. So I was sad about that. That's something that you can definitely expect in the future, not this coming week, but in the future, we want to resurrect that.
So I guess that's the final question on this topic. Is it going to be identical from last week, next week, the UI?
Yes, it will be. Yeah, we weren't able to make any further changes this week. And so, yeah, what you see is, what you saw last week will be the same. But I think it's, we're getting more experienced with how to use it. Kibbles and Brian, I think they did a fantastic job with, where to bring the camera, what elements to bring up and when. And even as you're watching last week's broadcast from the beginning all the way through to the end, I think that we improved just through that day. When to bring up, game to game even. Right.
When I was doing replays, I was watching the observers and they would just get better and better and better. It was fun to watch.
Right. So yeah. So anyway, we're getting better. We're learning how to do this better. So I think you can expect to see us doing a better job with it next week. And this is all very much kind of a beta thing for us, right? We don't really know. We're not perfect at this. We know that what we accomplished is not the final thing we will forever have, right? This is kind of a first attempt at it. And I think, if we were to use this for future events, we definitely want to improve it a lot more. And I mean, you and I talked a ton last weekend about the kinds of crazy things we could add. So, I think the biggest takeaway is that, what we've got is kind of a cool direction, I think, and then we just need to fix the issues with it. When you say do better for future events, do you mean future TV events? I mean, I don't know. Obviously we don't have specific plans about when or what we'd be using this for, but for me personally, I watch a lot of esports in my living room, right? I have a computer hooked up to my TV specifically for this, and now even with like Chromecast and stuff, I'm able to watch a ton of stuff in my living room, and this is how I've been watching esports for 4 or 5 years at this point. And I've just kind of gotten used to the fact that I can't read anything from my couch. And so I think that for the scenarios where you expect people to be watching in your living room or watching in a sports bar or things like that, those are the kinds of places I would kind of expect to see this broadcast UI being used. It's not for everything, it's not for everyone, but in the case where we're kind of expecting most people are not sitting, by themselves at a computer, but instead it's a more social experience in a living room or in a sports bar, I think this is the more appropriate way to go. And like I said, there's a ton of problems with it, right? Like we're gonna make a lot of improvements. No, I don't have specifics about when would be the next time you would see this.
Actually, I'd have to say it's not even just the points of when you're looking at a TV that's far away, but also when you're on your tablet. Like I noticed when I was using my Nexus 7 a lot, I was just like back when I was watching other games, I was just like, he's got workers. He's
Right.
got a good amount of workers. I assume that looks like a double digit.
Right, right. And so kind of the main direction we've been going with that is that, you know, I don't think it's necessary to have all information all the time, always visible. It's a matter of contextually bringing up what's most important at that moment. And it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work for the casters. It's a lot of work for the observers to know what to bring up and when to bring it up. But I think with a large enough production and enough people working on it, you actually can get you know, the right people bringing up the right information, even possibly even doing some smart stuff with code where it can kind of detect, oh, this is the right thing to bring up at the moment or something like that. But that's kind of the direction we were going. Is that so, for instance, having all of your talents from level 1 through 20 all there visible as squares when you're level 1. There's a lot of empty space there, and it's going to be a good 20 minutes before you even take use of those extra things. So it's really just a matter of being smarter with how we're using the information, how we're using the space.
So I want to rewind a little bit to something you were talking about, which was the observers. Right. And this is something that I tried to explain a little bit last week in terms of how the observing was so fluid, so smooth. Can you just quickly run through how that all works?
Right. Okay. So one of the things we discovered right away, well, we knew what would happen is if we took away the minimap, that hurts the observer incredibly, right? The observer relies on the minimap for information and for clicking to jump, right? And so we were like, well, how can we make this work, right? Is it possible? And that actually could have been a complete showstopper for us. And so what we did was we remembered that you could slave a camera for an observer to any other player. And so what if you slave the observer to another observer, right? Which is what we did. And what happened was, okay, so the way that it worked is Brian was kind of our main cameraman, and he was controlling the observer, the main broadcast computer. He was the one controlling the actual computer that you guys saw. There was a second observer that was using Ali's interface that had all the extra information, everything we'd want, right? So Brian, while controlling the broadcast computer, was actually looking, well, he's looking at a combination of both the, I'm sorry, I actually messed that up. Brian was controlling the dirty.
We call it dirty and clean.
Sorry.
Clean is what the broadcast sees. Dirty is with all the good information.
So Brian was controlling that one, but because the broadcast one had its camera slaved, it would automatically follow wherever he went. So Program was slaved to dirty, Brian controlled dirty, and that allowed Program to just move wherever he went. And so he would look at the minimap, he would decide where to go. Although most of what he was doing was actually looking at the program. So he's kind of looking at the computer that's being slaved while controlling the other computer. And it was actually a really interesting setup how they did it. They actually even swapped the keyboards so that the keyboard for the monitor, this is why I got so confused, the keyboard for the monitor he was sitting in front of was actually controlling the computer next to it. And so it was a really cool setup. And what it actually also did, as kind of like a happy accident, was that it introduced this kind of steady cam feeling, essentially, because the sampling that occurs for how the that slaved observer works, it would only pull up some samples and kind of interpolate between. And what that does is it actually creates a full like steady cam experience, because all those little kind of jitters you would have just from moving your mouse, they all get smoothed out by the interpolator. It creates this feeling that you have to get used to, where it's almost like you're ice skating while you're controlling the camera, and it's got a slight delay to it. But once you've kind of gotten used to that, it actually works really well. And after talking to them, after them, practicing a ton with it and going these last couple weekends, they were saying they always want to use this setup because it corrects all of those little tiny errors. It also means that the mouse is never visible, which is nice, right? So you take the mouse, you just tuck it to the side, and then he's able to move the mouse wherever he needs to, and you never kind of see that or get distracted by that. So I thought that was a really cool kind of accidental finding that we had.
I'm actually, we have the two computers set up here, and I'm thinking that we might actually try to do that, like, because it looks so good, the Steadicam. Like, it's cool. Now,
well, and it's one cool thing that they discovered too is that he really didn't have to be careful at all, right? Like, he's used to kind of being so steady as much as he possibly can, but he could actually just throw that all away and not worry about it at all. And there were some cool effects he did with like how he zoomed in and when he moved and stuff that kind of allowed him to just be sloppy and just kind of scoot across the map, but it interpolates nice and smoothly. So it was really cool in lots of ways.
Yeah, I watched his dirty cam and it was terrible. Oh.
Yeah, right.
It was dirty.
Shots fired.
Cool. Now, this poses a whole big discussion on that whole idea of we have this cam that slaves to another cam where we have different interfaces. Mm-hmm. Does that open up the option for TV interface while a simultaneous online with more information interface?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so this is just kind of a broadcast solution at that point, whatever you're looking to go for. But at this point, the setup that we had here had 2 different computers, and then whoever the broadcasters are want to do, if they want to take the feed from both or whatever, that's totally fine. Cool. Yeah, I mean that would work right now as is.
That's very cool. That's really good options. Because I got to say, I have to compliment you. I know I did in person, but I have to say it on air. In terms of what the UI that you created for TV did, for a TV broadcast, it's brilliant. It really is.
Thank you.
So you guys got a lot of feedback from week 1 to week 2 in terms of at least getting this mini map implemented. Did you guys, what was the change in feedbacks from 2 onward? And so you guys have decided not to make any changes. So you guys saw much better feedback. I'm hoping.
Yeah, I think that what we found was that we hit a point that we're happy with, right?
Okay.
In terms of capabilities of the UI, right? For this event, happy with for what our capabilities were for what we can actually accomplish
feasibly,
in that time, feasibly.
Yeah.
Because as you guys may have heard on Monday, we're releasing this game at some point too, right?
This is true.
So we've got things we need to finish up there as well, and this is something I could easily, because I love this. I love esports. I'm super passionate about this whole project. I could spend the next 6 months working on nothing but this easily, right? But there's other things we got to work on, and so I think that we hit a point where we were happy with that. We didn't want to introduce more risk. I think that having that kind of heroic indicator break on us at the event was one of those wake ups for me that I was like, okay. I wanted to get in as much as I can, but we need to be careful because it's easy to break something and not know it. And I wouldn't want to break something else, in the process, especially for the live event coming up this Sunday.
Okay, production things. Ignore me. Pulling up the UI for science so we can talk about it.
I see some people asking about mana bars, and just kind of makes me think, what was the decision making in terms of how much information to scale back, right? So obviously at some point there was a breaking point where you're like, okay, mana bars is too much information, especially to the more simple style that we're looking to portray. So what was the decision making for the breaking point?
That was actually an interesting one because that was something we did not cut initially. Mana bars obviously have their place. There's a lot of information there, and that was the kind of thing that maybe we even pulled too far on. And in a future update, I might want to see what we can do about that. But what happened was in a lot of our kind of test sessions that we had, we would bring in the entire team or whoever wanted to come and just kind of watch it. And Tim and I were actually the casters for it. And Trixler, he's in chat right now, I'm sure. And so we would cast it, and then we just take feedback. There'd be 20 people in the room or whatever the number was, kind of watching. And we received feedback a number of times that. They thought the mana bars were unnecessary and they created some noise. And I thought that was interesting feedback. And I kind of, at first I kind of deflected it thinking no, it's actually kind of important. But then I heard it enough. I was like, well, maybe there's something there. And I think I may have been in a mood of just taking a machete to everything and just, wanting to just see how far we could go. But it was, it was an interesting one because I think there's a lot of truth to that in a lot of the time, mana bars aren't that important, right? But then, except for the time that they are, right? Yeah. And then you do want it, right? And I think that was kind of the case where I was catching myself watching these games. I watched them all weekend. I was at the studio there, and there were a couple times where I was like, oh, does Jaina have enough mana or not right now? Where are we? And that's kind of when I kind of realized, okay, maybe we stepped a little too far for that one. Maybe it's the kind of thing that it could be something that a caster could choose to bring up, or maybe there's some other way to do it. Maybe it's not a bar, but maybe there's a low mana warning or something like that. I don't really know the answer, to be perfectly honest. Mm-hmm. I think that the key thing is that we just want to experiment with everything, right? And mana bars were one of those, and they may have gone a little too far, I guess. And so we'll see. I'm. They're not going to change for this weekend just because of all the reasons I mentioned before. But it was definitely feedback we listened to and heard. And the interesting thing is, we heard it both sides. When we had it, people said take it away, and then we didn't have it, people said where is it? So it was interesting.
Who were the people you were testing? Were it just random Blizzard employees, or were you just actually taking random people who know nothing about esports?
It was Blizzard employees plus some people were able to bring in significant others or some other person, and so the range would be from people like John Z or Ken Eric or someone who obviously are super into esports and know the game inside and out. And then it would be to people who, are kind of, more mid-level and maybe follow some esports, all the way down to have never seen esports but have played video games before. Obviously we're not taking people in off the street who don't even know what a video game is.
Right.
But the range was kind of all over the place. And I was actually surprised. It was the designers who, I don't mean to throw them under the bus, but it was the designers who were like, you know what? We think you can get away with it. When they finally said that, I was like, okay, I thought you would be the ones defending it the most, but if you guys think so, let's try it. So
John Z.
No, it wasn't John. It wasn't John.
All right, so we talked a lot. Like, you even mentioned this. We talked a lot about potential other features that could be put in, and immediately, the first things that came up in my mind were we look at StarCraft 2 and you look at the ability to pull up like the workers or like the supply and like stats, like that kind of stuff. Is that something that we should be expecting? Like, what kind of features have you been like brainstorming for Heroes?
Right. So again, we've been entirely focused on the dorm event, right? And we don't have specific cases for when we will definitely be using this in the future, but this is something I don't want to just die. So the kinds of things that we've been thinking about, we've got just panels all over the place, right? When you're watching pro sports on TV, they've got a lot of just different things that come up at different times. So imagine this. Imagine you've got something that there's like a kind of a rectangle panel that comes up that shows you the highest rated assassins on both sides. And then it gives you the stats. It has like a little face of Vala versus Jaina or whatever, right? And then it has the stats of the characters of what their damage numbers are, etc. And then someone can choose to bring that up and it would compare Vala versus Jaina or any kind of comparison you want to make. That would be one kind of thing. Another thing I can imagine is where we have the team names. Where it said ASU, whatever. You can dismiss that, and instead you can bring up the player faces or the character faces just like you have now, and they can kind of sit on top of the health indicators and give you death cooldowns and stuff like that, right? So you can imagine all these kinds of things that we are missing, that we know we're missing, different panels that come up at different times for when they're important, because there are definitely lots of times where your death time, the exact number of that is very important to know. Right. There's also lots of times where it's not, right? And so those are the kinds of things I want to bring up, whenever it makes sense, because again, it's all about use the space really well for what we have, but you don't need all the things all the time.
Is there things you've learned from doing this and things you've discovered or seen the potential of that we could be expecting in the live client soon for us in general?
You mean to use the broadcast UI, or you mean impacting the game?
Things that you've kind of discovered that were really cool that could be implemented into the broadcast that can make it over to the actual replay interface.
Right. Okay. So for the replay interface, yeah, possibly. I've been really focused on this and for shipping the game. But there's definitely a lot that we learned that when I look at our current observer interface, I think that there's improvements to make. But the difference is that those two are very, very different use cases, and I don't want to make the mistake of kind of pulling in some of the broadcast rules into the standard observer interface, because it's very different. Observing is really about kind of, you're sitting at a PC, you've got a lot more information, your resolution is far better, you can really see a lot more, I don't have to worry about things like title safe.
Right.
And also it's about analysis just as much as it is about kind of sitting back and enjoying. And so there may be some things, I guess I don't really have a specific answer for that. One thing, this is something we've talked about, it's not necessarily going to happen. One thing I personally think would be really cool is the blue health bars. I actually think that the blue health bar should be in game for your allies. This is, again, not an official Blizzard thing that is going to happen. But as I saw that, I was like, wow, it's kind of weird that your allies are blue everywhere. Your team is blue, but their health bars are green. So it's a discussion we're having to see if it makes sense or not, or at least as an option or something. We'll see.
I really like that, actually, when I was watching the broadcast. I was noticing the intrinsic, they're red, they're blue. Got it. I see it on, immediately instead of being everybody's got a green health bar, and I'm going to assume that these people are on this team, these people are on this team.
Well, and that came from our feedback as casters with the new UI, was that I kept tripping up and saying the green team. I was like, oh, the blue team here is, the green team. Wait, what color are they? And we just realized, wait a minute, that's kind of weird. And I think it was one of those moments where we've been so close to the project, we just, health bars are green. That's what they are. Health bars are green in every game, right?
Yeah.
But when we sat back and we're like, wait a minute, that's kind of weird. Is that really right? And we're, again, it was at the same time I was taking machete everything. I said, that's it. They're blue.
I love that. That was, of all the changes, that's my favorite.
Yeah.
I think that's probably my favorite as well.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll take that feedback back to the guys and use that as more ammo for this.
At least for spectator mode, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Because
Yeah, I noticed that tuning in immediately. I saw the observer, and then I immediately honed in on the health bars. Like, wow, that looks so much cleaner, so much more fluid. For some reason, everything just jumped out at me more. The information was more readily available to me.
you could
I liked
even
it.
argue that if the health bars are green, as if you're playing it, it could force the viewer to have a biased perspective towards the green health bars because that's the friendly team. That's me. That's my team, right? The red team is enemy. So it creates that kind of mentality.
Yeah, yeah. I also, and this isn't something I'm an expert on because I'm not colorblind myself, but I want to talk to some people. I think that the blue and red might be friendlier to colorblind people as well. So it's another consideration.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
blue and orange, I think, would be.
Teal and orange are what we typically use, like
Yeah,
cyan and
teal
orange
and
color.
orange, yeah.
But I think blue and red may also be a good compromise. So we'll see.
Interesting.
All right. This is the hardest hitting question I could possibly hit
right,
you with.
Here we go.
Prepared.
And it has
Buckle up.
been on my mind for God knows how long. And I saw this question and I said, I need to know this.
Okay.
Matt, why hexagons?
I saw that in the Reddit thread. So someone did point out that hexagons are actually a really convenient shape because they tessellate very well. I don't know that that's actually the specific reason. I think that Nick, our UI artist, just loves hexagons. And so it's
Nick
actually
Slough?
Your hexagon.
yeah, yes, exactly. Nick Slough,
Yeah,
the lead,
okay,
lead
right.
UI artist. And so he did, when he did the first mock-ups, he had hexagons everywhere, and we thought it was, honestly, I think the UI's always looked very good. And but we thought it was kind of funny, just hexagons everywhere. And like a fun little story with that is we actually had to write changes into our main UI shader to support hexagons everywhere, because typically when you have UI, it's like a button, for instance, it's just a rectangle, right? So you put text or you put an image inside of that, you just fit the hexagon inside of it, and they're just good, right? Well, if you have a square texture and you want to put that inside of a hexagon, it's going to end up kind of sticking out outside of it, so you have to mask it. Well, the masking we were doing before was just kind of a simple masking, but because we're going to have hexagons everywhere, we actually needed a shader-based hexagon solution because it'd be more performant. And so he, invented a whole brand new feature with all these hexagons everywhere. We had to do actual engineering work to support the hexagons. Then he went and took away half of them in a later update.
I know. I was going to say, like, where did the hexagons go?
Right.
Well, there's a few down here.
Actually, this one came about because we wanted to add the progress bars to be more visible, so you can know what your hero experience level was for each of the heroes there. And hexagons can have progress bars, but they're kind of funny. And so they decided to go with the circle for that particular element there. And then we also wanted to push further on just some visual language, right? So that we have a common visual language for different kinds of elements. We're not mixing our shapes. So now whenever you see a hero is always going to be inside of a circle. When you have an ability will be inside of a hexagon. When you have a reward, that's going to be inside of a diamond, things like that. Just kind of help with consistency, that kind of stuff.
Cool.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense.
But I love hexagons, and now you're starting to see that in like other Blizzard key art and things like that. And every time I see it, I point to Nick. I was like, "Look what you started! There's hexagons everywhere
See
now."
what you've done.
We're heading into the age of hexagons.
Right.
Exiting the age of Helvetica font and we're going into the age of hexagons in design.
Yeah.
All right, let's transition to
Okay.
talk about the actual in the game when you're playing the game. So not spectator,
Yep.
but player.
Yeah.
One of the requests I've seen quite a bit online is, will we ever have team health bars where we can see
Right.
our allies' health bars on the side?
Yeah, like party frames or
Yeah.
something like that, right? It's something that we've talked about. I can't give any kind of commitment. Yeah, Kevin's dancing because it's a party.
Yeah.
We've definitely never used that joke internally. But yeah, it's something that we've talked about. And the thing that I think is really interesting about that is I want to kind of figure out specifically what are the problems that they're trying to solve with that, right? And I know some of them, obviously, like, you want information and you want to know heroic available, if someone off screen has health bars, if they're low health or whatever. But the party frames are a solution. I like to more focus on the problems and then see what the correct solution is to that problem. And maybe the answer is party frames, maybe it's something else. But it's something that we've talked about, and we definitely know that there is a desire for that. And so, it's possible that in a future update or multiple updates, really, you may see some movement towards that or some other way that we address that. But I think it's really good feedback. I know that when I play like Brightwing, for instance, right? Like I really want to just know what everyone's health is all the time, so I can go and teleport around to whatever's best. But you just have to balance it against the core gameplay and is it actually solving the correct problem, things like that. But no, we're not against it, but I'm not committing to it either, I guess.
How about having multiple scalable versions of this, where I don't even know if it's something that should be unlocked, like as you play the game, but have some way to toggle it right now. If we want access to heroic cooldowns, we have to hit tab and go over to like the school. But like maybe it's something that's like as you play more, you set an option what you prefer, you can get access to. But if you don't want this information, it can go away as well.
I think you have to be careful with options. I mean, options can be a useful tool when they're appropriate, but they can also be a really bad crutch that you end up, building all these different permutations for all the different things that are out there, and it ends up getting kind of messy. It also, a lot of these things can have gameplay repercussions as well. So now maybe there is a correct option that you should always have on. Well, if that's the correct option, why isn't that just the way to do it, right? Things like that. Yeah. So, you have to balance against that. It doesn't mean that we can't have something like that as an option. It's just that we need to evaluate it and make sure that's the correct decision. A really good example of this is we did announce, was it a week or two ago, that we are adding that option so that you can't, you can choose to not right-click through the minimap.
Right,
so
that's huge.
You can, right.
I noticed that disappeared.
Right. And so that was the one that that we finally did decide that an option is probably correct, right? We tried different options and different options. We tried different solutions to see, maybe we can help it by, making the highlight more visible when you mouse over it. Maybe we help it by making it so that some abilities click and some abilities don't, right? But, I know for myself, I really love the ability to be able to right-click on the minimap. I do it all the time, just move across the map and things like that. And so I wouldn't want to lose that. And so ultimately we decided that, and this isn't a final solution, this is a first-pass solution, we just added an option so that those people who are really having a hard time with right-clicking on the minimap accidentally, they can choose to just opt out of it. But everyone else, and I believe the default is that it works as it is now, but everyone else who still enjoys having the minimap and relies on that, they can right-click on it. So that was one where having an option did help us. I wish that there is a correct answer for that one that could make everyone happy and perfect and never misclick. But I after trying different things, I suspect there may not be a perfect solution to that one.
That would make it in? I thought it didn't make it in.
No, it's coming in the next patch.
Okay. I saw it in one of the patch notes, and then the patch that came out that same day or the next day, it was removed off the list.
Oh, was it?
But if it's the next patch, that's fine too. I saw it somewhere, and then the next time I saw the official patch notes, it wasn't included.
It is in the next patch, but I do need to always give always a disclaimer that we could discover something and some bug we have to fix, and it could come out. But we have every intention, and it passed the first pass of testing.
Okay. Very good.
Okay. Jared, got anything for us?
What were the like when doing the UI for special heroes and stuff like Lost Vikings? What are the challenges in setting something like that up?
The thing you have to, so you need to be careful that you don't change too much, obviously, right? Because you're kind of used to the game being one way, and you don't want everything to fully rearrange every time you choose a different hero, right? And also there's some technical things, just making sure that we do the proper swaps and that we then do the right thing when Abathur clones the Lost Vikings. Not that he ever would, but if he did, it needs to do the right thing and not be broken.
Wait,
right?
do you only get one Viking if you do that?
I think so. I'm actually not 100%.
Yes. I have tested this multiple times.
So actually, that's also interesting, actually, that in the fact that if you were to clone someone, then you only get one Viking should you actually get the split UI, because that doesn't make any sense. You only have control of one. So anyway, you can see all the fun problems that the designers throw us all the time. But then you also have the case of what if I'm an observer and I'm observing through Abathur and Abathur is cloning someone, right? Like there's these kinds of things that we have to worry about. Those are mostly just technical challenges. We can work through those. From a design standpoint, it's really just about making sure that you have all of the correct information that you need all the time for, there's the all in all again. Playing, of course, is very different. But making sure that you have, what you need that's relevant for that particular character, right? So like Murky technically has a hero-specific UI as well because he's got that little egg that shows up, right?
Yep.
Now this is all kind of very early first pass versions of what we would like to do in the future. I mean, there are some new heroes on the horizon that I won't talk about, but they're starting to take even further advantage of hero-specific UI. Thrall's another example that has kind of that little wolf thing. And so we want to push this whole concept further and further to the point that,
now.
well, and we even have like some things that, it's kind of, again, an early version of it, but you have some ability-specific UI, right, where, you get engorged and now your whole screen gets covered, things like that, right?
Yeah.
And that actually was a UI problem, right? People didn't understand why they couldn't move anymore. They didn't get that they were inside of stitches. And so by giving you a giant UI that's just blocking everything, right, you're able to kind of get it, oh, something major is happening right now, right? You understand it very easily.
So that means you're going to do it for Maw and Void Prison and everything, right?
Well, I can't commit to anything, but I mean, you can imagine things like that would be cool things for us to do.
And there's also some challenges there too. I saw someone mention Divine Shield. So
Yeah.
it's like if you get Divine Shield thrown on you, maybe something should be indicating that you are now invincible. But you run into the problem, you still are able to cast all of your abilities and move around. You don't really want things that are covering your field of vision while you're still capable of. So you got some challenges there.
Just play the storm music from Mario Kart.
Yeah, right, exactly. No, but one thing we are actually doing that, again, should be in the next patch, but, always caveats.
Soon, TM.
Yeah, right, is that your nameplate. You know how your name gets replaced with talent available when a talent becomes available? We're also going to replace that with things like stunned and invulnerable, vulnerable, like those kinds of things as well.
That's really cool.
To kind of help you, key off that, yes, there's something different right now. And also to help you when you see that on others as well. I'm 90% certain you see that on others. Don't quote me on that. Now I'm on video. Pretty sure it's the case.
All right.
Oh, you can see when people are silenced for now. Like
Or when they're cleansed.
That's the cleanse would be nice.
Well,
right. So
actually, just to jump back real quick to Kubi, though, you were saying that when people get Divine Shield and when you get Maud and when you get all these other ones, I think Gorge and Web Wrap would be different, though, because both of those, they take away your character. You don't see where your character is gone.
Oh, no, that's fine. Like, that's
Maw
why
is
they
more
work
of like
well.
you just got caught in that. Web Wrap
that's why
is more
those
so,
work well now. But I've seen people say, like, oh, it would be nice for, like, I've Divine Shielded people and they run away. It's like, why you run away? You're invincible. Go ham, right?
Okay, I could see
but you got to be careful with the scaling between the two. Because
I don't think that would necessarily solve that, though. I think that's just kind of an inherent thing that people are like, oh, I'm about to die.
Yeah, maybe.
Right?
It could be.
I always wish that, you're invulnerable. Just go. Do anything you want.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Maybe music is actually a good solution. Maybe you had a good idea there, Kevin.
Me, not Kevin. Jake.
Oh,
No, it was
credit.
Kevin.
Sorry.
It was Kevin.
Oh, sorry.
Nice job, Kevin.
Everything coming out of here, it's going to be under my name now.
Dang it. I
I'm really
credit
just-
from a Blizzard person on air.
I'm really just proud of Kev lately. He's been stepping it up and delivering
Really coming up
good
with
content
great
to our
ideas.
show.
Yeah.
I know.
Thanks,
That's
Kev.
what I do. You're
Thanks,
welcome,
Kev.
guys.
All right. So we
Did you guys
talked.
see me produce this past Heroes of the Dorm week? It was pretty good, wasn't it?
We talked a lot about in-game. And let's talk a little bit more about, because you do everything, right? You work on the actual just when you log into the game and the menus and stuff, correct?
Yeah, right. Well, everything is not the right word, but
Well, you work on the menus.
yes. All right. All of the screens there. My team is responsible for all these screens.
Yes.
Yep.
So when I saw this in the first patch, and I immediately said I was streaming, I was like, the game is ready for launch. That was my impression. I think this is phenomenal. I think we've seen a lot of rough UIs throughout the beta, but this is actually just excellent. But I guess in terms of like what can you tell us in terms of like, are there things that you guys still want to implement? Are there other features that you would like to include?
In-game tournaments. In-game tournaments.
I mean, there is.
That would be the same area, but
Well,
it'd be nice.
I
maybe.
mean,
You'd have to make the UI for it,
I
Corey.
suppose.
Corey.
you'd need brackets. You would need signups. Yes, you would need.
Yeah,
to make UI for it.
Corey.
There is an endless list, right? Absolutely endless list of the kinds of things we want to do. And obviously I can't jump into to those kinds
fine.
of things, but yeah, I mean, we all are a part of the community, right? I listen to your guys' show all the time. I read the posts on Reddit. Like, we're aware definitely of the requests out there. And then we also have our own things that we really want to get in for ourselves. And so you can expect that this is going to be a game that's constantly changing, constantly adding new stuff. Like, this is a game that we are dedicated to. And, every single patch you can expect cool new stuff being added. I mean, that's kind of where we are. So, yeah, I mean, you can imagine all sorts of different things just being added. And if you guys have cool feedback, post on Reddit, things like that. I saw there was one question on Reddit. Someone was asking, how do I get my feedback other than posting on the forums or something? But that's actually the best way, right? Forums, Reddit, etc. We read this all the time. Especially things that are related to my area. I will read literally every single post that someone, that in the entire thread about that particular topic. And so we take that and we talk about it. And this is a game that, for the first time, we're kind of building very publicly. This entire alpha and beta has been a very different experience than say StarCraft. And so I think that's one of the coolest things that we're doing right now is it's really, the community, the players out there are able to really influence us, and I think it's a really cool thing. They can reach out to us directly. They can post and things like that.
Yeah, Corey.
I mean, if you look at the first 5-6 episodes of Town Hall, all the hero designs we did, Blizzard just took those directly for.
That's true. Now I'm just waiting for my Deckard Cain, who's Macho Man Randy Savage when he's in his earlier years. Oh yeah, Roger, brother. I'm waiting for that one.
Yo,
Still waiting for that one.
Phoenix is gonna be the best though. Our Phoenix hero design.
Our Phoenix design was great.
Oh my
Yo,
God.
Blizzard, hire, man.
All right.
Can I throw one thing in? Because I saw in chat someone brought up the flaming nerfs. The little flaming bars thing. I just wanted to call out that was a bug. That was unintentional. We did not mean to remove that. It actually works in low.
The kill
streak thing.
The kill streaks.
So they work in low, and then they got killed in medium and above, and that was an accident. So I think it's been fixed. Don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure we fixed it. But that was unintentional. And I was actually very sad because that was one of my pet features. I actually really loved that, and I was the one who worked on the initial implementation for it. And so to see them gone, I was so sad because I don't know. I like it's a nice little thing that happens. It's that kind of he's on fire type thing.
Right. It's like playing in 64.
Matt, you were just talking about taking feedback from Reddit. I just want to jump in because I think this is one of the questions that was also on the Reddit. What is the most useful suggestion feedback you've received from an end user? Because I mean, this is I think a lot of people run into getting suggestions and everything, but sometimes you see that one comment that's just wow, that really kind of changed the game for me.
Yeah, so the things that are most useful to me are feedback coming from a point of view that is very different from mine in terms of how you play or approach the game, or what your setup is, or just anything like that, right? Things that we wouldn't necessarily think of. I think a great example is this actually came from your guys' show a couple months ago, right after we put out the profile patch that had match history and all that. Zoya was talking about, oh yeah, it's neat and all, but now everyone can see all of our comps, right? For when they do scrims. And so that was something that we just hadn't really thought of, to be perfectly honest, that there are very legitimate cases of wanting to hide it. And this is kind of the thing where you're like, oh yeah, of course. You look at your match history, you want to see who was in the game, what heroes they played. It's a very obvious thing to add to match history. And then Zoya brought that up, and I was like, no, that's actually a completely legitimate case. People should definitely be able to hide your comp. And so, that morning, because I listen to on my commute very often, that morning I got into the office, I entered the task, and then I think even that day I implemented it or something, because StarCraft already had the functionality that we needed for it.
That's awesome.
So the engine feature was already there. I was just able to kind of hook it up. And so that's a good example of, someone who plays the game very differently from me. I'm not on a pro team, right? I follow esports. I'm very engaged and I'm into the community, but I'm not on a pro team myself. And so there's very different kind of use cases and different kinds of ways that they look at the game that, that's the most useful kind of stuff.
That's insane. That's awesome to hear.
Yep.
Chad is asking in-game achievements.
Oh, achievements are a fun one, right? We've talked about this before. You got to be really, really, really careful with achievements, right? Because achievements kind of fundamentally will change your behavior because that's kind of the point of them, right? And if you remember the very, very beginning Tech Alpha, right, and about 4 UIs ago, we had those hero quests where it was something like land 20 hooks with stitches, right? Or even had daily quests
that were a long time ago. That was the original public alpha.
Yep. And we even had daily quests that were like capture 10 watchtowers or things like that. And so what you end up with is you get people going in there, they'll stand on a watchtower, someone comes back and they end up trading watchtowers. And we're like, no, that's not how you're supposed to play the game. Like, watchtowers are a thing that you should do a lot. It's an important part of the game, but don't just focus on the watchtowers, right? It's things like that. So you have to be really, really, really careful with what you do. And that's kind of why we, changed to more of a, make decisions before you go into the game style of daily quest, and then the hero experience as well. And so, I don't know that we're going to see kind of your WoW style achievements anytime soon, because it's dangerous. It's really dangerous, right?
Without a campaign like StarCraft, it doesn't make sense to put that in multiplayer.
Unless they're very simple, like something like get 1,000 wins in quick match or something.
Right,
It's like, okay, the name of the game is obviously to always win,
but even those you have to be careful for, right? Like 1,000 games is tough because then that kind of encourages botting and things like that, right?
That's true. That's true.
So it just we've tried lots of different things, and so they're a very dangerous tool, but they're also super powerful when used correctly because they can help. Especially kind of new players, that can kind of help guide them and show them that there's different things out there. Oh, you should try this thing. You should try this thing. You should try this thing, right? But beyond that, you want to be careful of kind of those hardcore things. I mean, you can imagine all sorts of different crazy ideas where maybe different game. There's like a game mode dedicated to it or something like that. But there's nothing like that we're that I can talk about or we're working on or anything like that.
Ooh, giving us some hope. All right, I need to give you my big thumbs up as to what I want to see more of in the future.
Okay.
It's very crucial for esports. I want to be able to click more things like candles. I do this all day. I just sit here. I just flicker these candles for days.
Yeah.
And you have to make sure that when we get more
The
heroes.
moment I found out about that, I messaged Jake on Skype, like, dude, you can click the candles, and he responds like, I know, it's so cool.
Right. Yeah, I mean, talk about a feature that gets dangerous, right? The moment you add something like this, then you have to add it
I
forever.
clicked everything.
You're committed. You're committed.
Yeah, no. A great example
going
is
back.
the Dizzy thing in the shop, right? That was something I added, a year and a half ago, right before we went to into Tech Alpha, just because I thought it was fun. Because the artist's like, oh, can you add it so you can rotate? Because people might want to see all angles of the character or whatever. I was like, yeah, sure, it's an easy thing. And then I added, I was like, oh, but what if you just, you spin it too much? Then I just play the stun animation, right? And then that was just a fun little thing. We added it, and I remember vividly. I think it was Husky on stream during Tech Alpha. He discovered that, and he's like, "Oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever!" And he went through and he did every single hero and watched every single one spin. I was like, "Oh, that's great, that's cool." But now, we have like a feature we have to support forever, basically, because of that. Yeah. I've received bugs on it where it's like, oh, this particular skin, the dizzy spiral doesn't line up correctly for the character. I'm like, oh man, now we got to do this for real. So it must just be like a fun little Easter egg.
Okay. That's cool.
Well, we are nearing the end of our time with you, so I'm going to give you the floor to talk about whatever you'd like for the final moments.
Oh, wow. So yeah, I mean, I kind of touched on this before, but the big thing for us is this game is constantly changing, right? And we are all a part of the community, and we read those threads, we read the Reddit comments and things like that, and so the forum threads and watch shows like yours and the other shows that are out there, and so I encourage the community to reach out to us, to give us feedback, to tell us what's working, what's not working, things like that, to give us their perspectives. Like I said, the different kinds of players out there. This is kind of it's in many ways a collaborative effort now with the players out there, and this is, I think, a really cool and exciting thing to be working on. And I love Heroes. I play it all the time. You guys see me online. I play with you guys too, and I'm excited to see all the crazy things that we're going to be adding to this game forever.
Awesome, man. Well, it's been a pleasure having you, boys. Any final quick thoughts that you can get out quickly?
Yes.
I love you, Matt.
Can we get rotating cameras for like we have for the GSL introductions? Because I know that me and Jake want to do this all the time. Where it's like, and now we have Cloud9 Maelstrom, and we just rotate and zoom the camera into the same time. That would be so cool.
Zoya, they're talking about this like Playhem didn't invent this.
Ridiculous.
You're welcome, boys.
During the Dorm event, we talked about all sorts of fun stuff that we could potentially do with the cameras. So you can imagine that future stuff, the lessons that we learned from the Dorm event, we're going to start bringing those and just do fun, crazy camera work. So,
yes.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, Matt.
Okay.
Well, it's been a pleasure. I will see you next week in LA at the Heroes of the Dorm Finals. Looking forward to it.
Yes,
Next
I will
week,
see you there.
2 days.
2 days.
Yes. Thank you for coming on. We appreciate it so much.
All right. Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Yep.
And on that note, guys, we're going to throw in a quick commercial break. We'll be back in just a few minutes to continue talking about lots of cool things. We got Kubi's questions. We got the esports recap, talking a little bit more about Heroes of the Dorm and much more. So stay with us. We'll be back in a bit.